don't know if you guys can hear me or see me. But you know what, it's 5 after, so we'll get started. Hopefully you can hear me. So my name is Mark Gasperson with Minnesota Title. And this class is Don't Let Your Closing Blow Up. Randy Roop was going to be here with us. Unfortunately, he had a emergency closing come up, and so he had to do that right at 12 o'clock. So we're going to get moving. So the outline of this class is points of discussion, get behind the scenes in the title, top errors that can break a closing, secrets you should understand, nightmare closings. We'll get into some of those. There's some good ones. Why your lender matters. Of course, that's important, and how we can help you. So we're going to tell you some things that we've dealt with over the years in title that you may not be aware of, as well as what you can do to avoid them before something blows up. It's just some red flags to look for. Some errors that occur more than others, and we're going to try to focus on some of the more of those. We've spent some time talking to examiners, abstractors, the quality check department, as well as closers and coordinators who are very close to the scene to recall some of the experiences they dealt with, as well as things they wished agents understood so that a closing can go more smoothly. We'll talk some secrets that aren't kept secrets initially, of course, but more information that most people are not privy to that aren't behind the scenes in title. We're going to take you through some stories of closings that blew up, some nightmares that you never want to go through, as well as explain why the lender matters, and more people realize how we can help you through all of this. All right, so let's get rolling. Here's a quote that we like, in the title. The more you know, the better you'll be as an agent, but learning is the only thing that mind never exhausts, never fears, and never regrets. What does title do anyway? Coordinating many moving parts. So just to touch on this briefly, especially for the newer agents in the industry, in a nutshell, title company is an intermediary that helps to ensure the legality of a real estate transaction. In other words, it's their job to watch for any legal issues that could have an effect on ownership of the property. The role of the title company is to verify that the title to the real estate is insurable and legitimately given to the home buyer. So basically, we want to make sure that the rights of the property, the seller has the property, we can sell to the buyer. We schedule it and conduct the closing. It is the final step in the home buying process and leaves the final impression on your clients. So you want to be sure that you're working with a good one. Your reputation referral opportunities are linked to the experience. We aim to make it memorable and pleasant for everyone, which is why this class is so important in helping to avoid potential closing gone bad. And if you guys know Randy and Ryan, if you work with Randy and Ryan, they're a good team. Jane and Lindsay are a good team that help back up Randy and Ryan in this office. So they're a good team to work with. Nightmare closings, what you never want to happen. And we'll have a few examples for you of what went wrong and how to do your part. All right, so one, seems pretty obvious that people would have a valid ID. Many times we've had to stop a closing due to an expired ID or invalid ID. There are, due to COVID, obviously it was tough to get a new ID. You had to make an appointment that took months. So we did accept a expired ID with the yellow paper. We took pictures of that, and we did not have any problem with that going through. We also took passports. So there was ways around it, but it's important to make sure that they have a valid ID when they come to closing. Some mortgage companies, but again, because of COVID, normally on a normal year, they wouldn't take it, but this year they did when we went through the COVID process with the invalid ID, but with the yellow paper. So kind of got around that, but usually it's important to have the valid ID. Case one, the Rich bankruptcy. Here's one that we're going to go through one of the situations where a closing can blow up. There once was a man called Mr. Rich. The lender that he used had approved him for $600,000. The purchase agreement was signed for $800,000 home where he would put down $200,000 in cash and then borrow the remaining $600,000. The closing day came, and he let it slip at the closing table that he quit his job last week, but he did accept an offer for a new position that paid even more than his current company. It shouldn't be a problem, right? Well, wrong. In most cases, a buyer cannot help losing a job in the case of a layoffs or downsizing. But we have seen buyers change jobs at the last second. This should absolutely be avoided at all costs. At a minimum, it would be a delay in a closing so that new position can be verified and possibly 30 days of pay stubs at a new job. Sometimes a buyer may result in a denial. Examples include changing from an hourly or salaried W-2 job to a commission or 1099 job. In these cases, brand new commission income or 1099 may not count. Our best advice is to stay at your current job. Now, he said this at the closing table. One would wish they did not hear it, but since we did, the next question is, did you tell your lender about that? When they said no, we had to disclose this to the lender, and the lender didn't feel comfortable funding his loan. How could this be avoided? Well, I don't know. I mean, don't leave your job before you get your deal done, and then go looking for a new job, I guess. Or don't say anything. I don't recommend it, but that would be a case where you don't quit your job. All right, case number 2, show me the money. A huge reason that can delay a ruin or closing is the fact that lenders, buyers, sellers, and all others involved in a transaction drag their feet. Trying to coordinate a closing is not easy. That's true. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved. Be sure to tell your client that if a lender needs something, stop what you're doing and get it to them ASAP. A few days of delay. Oh, sorry, I lost my part. Lost where I am. Can delay a closing. The lender's relationship, communication, efficiency are huge. Whether or not we get the closing package on time is imperative to the closing happening. I cannot tell you how many times we are on pins and needles waiting for the lender to get us the final numbers or the package so we can do the closing. Sometimes we get it in an hour, 10 minutes, even before the closing. We just had one the other day that we waited on Monday. My closer in Roseville was waiting 45 minutes after the closing was supposed to start. She got the package from the lender. We should have it 3 days prior to, by the way. We don't always want to be alert issues or cause stress in any way. So we call constantly, email, beg and pray that we'll get it. This isn't all lenders, of course, but it is some, and we know who we can rely on and get us what we need in time to close. We know the ones that are less reliable and that we cringe at when we see them, that they're on the lender, because we know it's going to be a headache to closing. So we know that the good ones and the ones we like to work with, we have a better relationships with some. Things have to get pushed out. Some get rescheduled. And think about that. People have taken off work. They have events scheduled, movers ready to roll that then have to be postponed. Frustration ensues. Nobody wants to place blame because we are all a team working together. And yet, to be frank, many times we do not take the blame for a thing. We do take the blame for things entirely out of our control. And while we're many times unsung hero, I want to use a real example here of a situation that we fixed behind the scenes. Now, this case number 3 is kind of interesting. This has happened to us, and it can be awkward for everyone. This gentleman who we thought was who we thought was his wife to the closing table. This needs to be a story about how the wife was supposed to be there to sign off on the sale of the home, but the guy didn't realize it. This means that both parties are entitled to holders of the property and therefore must sign any contract for sale for it to be valid. If one party refuses to sell the property, it is possible to seek that the courts intervene to force the sale. Marital status is so important, especially in the state of Minnesota. I know people who call each other partners, husband and wife, and introduce them as such, but they are not actually legally married. We had one where the sellers sold their home and the husband and wife and at their purchase a few weeks later said, "Oh, we are actually divorced and just lived together and never got remarried." So they were once married, got divorced, and then got back together, but never legally got married again. That was a fun scramble. Once we had a seller who said she doesn't use her maiden name, but her divorce decree stated that her name was changed. Make sure people sign their legal name. We had a seller sign a closing. When Mr. Seller signed PA, he was not married. Day before closing, we find out he just got married, and to a foreigner to boot, had to hold 15% of her share to send it to the IRS again, FIRPTA. It's a real thing. In this case, this guy brought his mistress to sell the house. They weren't divorced, him and his wife, they weren't divorced, but didn't know that we were going to get a copy of their driver's license. I wonder what that conversation was like when his wife found out that instead of bringing her to the closing, he brought his girlfriend. Interesting. All right, case number 4. This just actually happened recently. We had a few judgments on title, which basically means when we do a name search, and we do that on sellers' names and properties, things can come up. Some are valid and some are not. Actually, that person, but have some similar names. When our sellers came to pre-sign, we're doing all seller pre-signs now due to COVID and still doing them right now currently. Our closer went over the list with the seller. The seller said one was his and provided us a payoff information and tax person's contact. We got to the closing and the other title company closer asked us about the judgments. So we sent them the affidavit saying our seller told us these aren't his. The other closer ran his social and all the judgments were our sellers. This included an IRS tax lien, Minnesota tax lien, and a very delinquent mortgage payoff. The closing got delayed, but ended up closing. Lesson here is make sure agents are going over what's going on with their clients in advance, as this was a shock to us and the agent. Mention that the title company has full access to their records, so it is best to be upfront if there are any pending judgments. Occasionally, the client may not even realize there are liens against them, or perhaps in the back of their mind that there might be, and suddenly everything is brought to light. I think one of the main things is, to make sure that they're signing the PA with their full name, especially if they're a common name like Smith or Anderson. John Smith, you can pull up a lot of information on a lot of John Smiths, but even if they use their middle initial to John A. Smith would help us a lot. But I think if we use John Allen Smith would help us even more. So we want to make sure we pull up the right information on your John Allen Smith. So that will help alleviate pulling up wrong information. When representing sellers, find out from the very beginning, whether any of the sellers have filed bankruptcy, whether anyone has passed away, whether anyone in title has passed away, or whether anyone in title has gotten married or divorced during the time that they own the property. Emphasize on the purchase agreement the importance of using the correct names and marital status on the PA. That can limit identifying issues for the title company right away, and also avoids the amendment to the PA later to match the names being used by the lender, which will more often be the full name and middle initial of the buyers. Noting marital status also allows to be aware of any discrepancies at an early stage. I would also encourage agents to keep in tune with their buyers, as I have also seen instances where a savvy buyer that has gotten cold feet on the purchase for one reason or another will extend their debt load before closing with the unexpressed intent of disqualifying themselves to obtain the mortgage, but under the PA, then allowing them to get their EM refund. All right, case number 5. This one gets a little lengthy. There's a couple cases in here, but the last one I really is interesting. So there's many horror stories that have happened during the final week walkthrough. Just before the deal closes, buyers can and should do a final walkthrough to ensure the property is in the same condition as when they agreed to when they purchased it, and when they had it inspected, and also to verify that the home is now empty. Sometimes it isn't. We had one guy, buddy, a friend of his, temporarily taking up housing in the back shed due to some in-between issues and getting an apartment, and was planning to move his items, but his truck broke down. Can you imagine going to the final walkthrough and seeing some guy trying to pack his stuff from the shed, from your shed, as you're doing the final walkthrough? That wouldn't be a very good feeling. Most commonly, a few unwanted items or trash might be left behind. That happens. While this is unlikely to be a deal breaker, even something as minor as the seller leaving behind a dirty house can delay closing if the buyer insists it be cleaned up, which I would. You should know their personality and be aware of what they may be walking into and how to handle that. So sellers, clean your houses before you go. I've heard some agents giving the gift of a full house clean at final as a professional gift. So that's interesting. Or for move out, which can be a win-win for the agent. Sometimes though, there are more serious issues. And here's where we get some real horror stories. Agreed upon repairs that have not been done or completed on time. While a buyer might agree to close escrow, if the issue is swept under the rug, they probably won't want to close if agreed upon repairs have not been completed. Was a roof supposed to be repaired and wasn't? If an inspector has to return for a re-inspect because the seller did not repair or replace the damage per the agreement, the seller will be responsible for the re-inspection fee. Having this addendum in the original contract incentives the seller to get the repairs right the first time. Sellers, make sure you have all agreed upon requests completed for closing and enough time allowed to complete the repairs so the receipts are completed, and be sure to send them to the coordinator and the buyers and see that the repairs have been done. It's also a good idea to have the contractor completing the work provide a lien waiver that can be provided to the title company. That's always good. A good buyer's agent will make sure that the repairs have been completed before the final walkthrough. Proactively looking out for the buyer's interest is one of the main reasons people hire buyer's agents in the first place. If that didn't happen, for whatever reason, everyone wants to avoid delaying closing. There are several options. The seller can agree to credit the buyer for a certain amount. A certain amount can be retained in escrow to cover the needed repairs. All the seller's funds can be held in escrow and not released until the repairs have been made. Obviously, these options only work if the buyer and the seller can agree on a course of action. The lender also typically needs to be aware of and approve of the course of action. I had this happen to my mother-in-law selling her house, and the inspector came through. She has a wood floor in the kitchen. The inspector broke the pipe underneath the sink and left, and the water ran from the dishwasher. He was running the dishwasher, and the dishwasher wasn't done, and ran water in the kitchen, and it wrecked the wooden floor. Now they have to fight with the inspector to fix the wooden floor, and they're actually, the realtor was thinking about holding the escrow from the buyer, but they decided to take it out on the inspector instead and gave the money back. But it's a bummer that this transaction is going on for my mother-in-law. She's got to deal with this. Another nightmare can be promised fixtures or personal property that are missing or broken. Maybe the buyer specifically negotiated for the crystal chandelier in the entryway and now it's gone. What would you do if you walked in and noticed that the chandelier was gone, but were certain the agent told you that the sellers agreed to leave it? This happened, and the buyer really wanted that chandelier. To find out that the chandelier was missing, what would you do? What would happen? How would you fix it? It wasn't any chandelier. It was probably at least a $4,000 fixture. Now this is a made up story, but, or is it? Maybe it happened. It was a nice fixture hanging down the big, beautiful window in the entryway. It was in fact one of the features of the house that attracted the buyers this wonderful grand entrance. To see that missing was a heart dropper, and their enthusiasm for this big day took a nosedive. The agent was shocked, as the buyers were, to see it missing. What would you do if you were the agent? What would you immediately call the other agent, right? Well, that's exactly what they did. The other agent's response was, "It was there 2 days ago, and my seller knew it was staying." They would never have taken that. Well, interesting enough, it turns out that that seller was married. Him and his wife got divorced. The wife didn't live at the house, the husband did. And the wife said, "When you sell that house in the divorce decree, I want the chandelier. Chandelier's mine." And he's agreed to it. But when he sold the house, he forgot about the divorce decree and never gave it to the title company, us, and we didn't know about it. So when they did the final walkthrough, that chandelier was missing. The ex-wife and friend, brother, maybe new husband, I don't know, went into the house. She still had the key to the house, went into the house and took the chandelier down the day before the final walkthrough. And she had rights to it. So this Mr. Seller then had to explain to the buyers what happened. And he had to give them money back off the sale of the house so they could go get a new chandelier. It wasn't the chandelier that they really were in love with, but they still closed on the house. They bought the house, he sold the house, and they got money off so they could go get a new chandelier. And that's how that was, averted. But still, the divorce decree is important. That helps us avoid some of those issues. But interesting story. So there's a case where another thing could blow up, but we averted it through adjusting. But divorce decrees are important on that one. So what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas. We'd like to think so. I think we can safely say that everything that happens in Vegas sadly does not stay there, even if it takes 10 years for the story to come up. It will, I assure you. So here's a problem that happened a few years ago where the closing did not go through. If you have a buyer that you know lives a bit on the wild side, or perhaps is young and new to home buying and the whole process, this is particularly important for an agent to keep an eye on. Some buyers don't realize that in their debt to income ratio changes, if it changes suddenly, so might the bank's willingness to lend them money. Even though it's been stated to them, are they really listening? If buyers take on a new debt before closing, this will almost certainly have an impact and may cause the lender to back out entirely. Similarly, if a buyer's job situation suddenly changes, what we talked about, the lender may no longer wish to fund the loan, which can be a bit tricky. With the state of the world we're in now, we are at a record low for mortgage rates and at a record high for unpredictability. In this particular situation, there was a gentleman who was pre-approved for about $300,000 and put an offer down, and all was going well towards closing date when he was suddenly swooped away on a surprise bachelor party to Vegas. That right there should be a hint that this is not going to go well. Needless to say, he had far too much to drink, ended up losing the savings he was going to put down on the house by getting a bit too confident at the craps table. He also decided to jump barefoot into the water fountain and cut up his foot because there was broken glass in the fountain. Ended up at the ER. realized he lost his wallet because he went looking for his insurance card. It was pretty much the real life version of The Hangover. This was unfixable. And not only was he broke, but he was out of his deposit money as well. So, what can you do as a realtor? You're not going to tell your people to not live life until closing, but you can, make sure they understand that the huge importance of not spending money or not getting arrested or don't do anything stupid between now and the closing date. Tell them to put a gentle pause on the big spends, no huge purchases. Don't go out and buy a new car. Don't run up your credit cards at the furniture stores. No gambling. Wait until you close on the house. Do not, don't transfer large amounts of money either. Don't move money around. That'd be a little bit of advice for you to help your clients out. So, case number 7, the sanity check. Tell you about this seller who came to a closing inebriated, or at least appeared to be. She allegedly killed her husband years before, and she had quite a few problems. So she felt uncomfortable about closings, and she was a little drunk. So as she signed, the seller told her, the closer, she didn't need to explain the documents to her, and she kept repeating the statement over and over. The closer then decided to ask her if she knew what they were all doing there. The seller responded by saying, "Yes, I'm signing everything so I can get rid of that house that I hate." The closer felt pressured to continue with the closing, but didn't feel right about it. Yet she continued, and the closing was completed. Down the road, the title company received a call from the seller asking how they could have gone through the closing knowing the state she was in and how she didn't know what she was doing. She threatened to sue the title company, her agent, and everyone involved. Legally, anyone at that closing who suspected the seller might have been suffering from mental impairment could hold some liability. Closer, agent. Luckily for all involved, this seller never went through with her threat and was not heard from again. But can you imagine what might have happened if she had? If the doc becomes involved with any investigation, there's always a chance that a part of their response would be the suspension of your license. However, that being said, I would assume it would depend on the degree of the closer involvement to the knowledge of the client's impairment. Was the client obviously impaired, or was the client just a little off? The amount of the knowledge of awareness of the impairment and then proceeding on any way would determine the degree of negligence on the part of the closer. So that was an interesting case. That wasn't ours, but that was an interesting one. Quick claim deeds. We can help you with that. It's not a big problem, but we can certainly help with quick claim deeds. Some secrets. If I was an agent, I'd want to make sure my closing went smoothly all the time. I would pick a Tuesday or a Wednesday, if you can. I know that this can't always happen. Most closings blow up at the end of the month, or the 15th. I would avoid Thursdays. If something does get delayed, if the package is late, you can still close on a Friday. But I would not want to close on Fridays if at all possible. Even scheduling a day or two before the last day of the month can make a big difference. This is usually because the mortgage companies are so backed up. Trying to get the end of the month closing packages out. It just depends on where you are in line. When preparing a purchase agreement for buyers, find out and use the buyer's legal name with a middle initial. Many purchase agreements list a buyer as Joe Smith when the real name is Joseph A. Smith. Having the middle initial allows us to ignore some judgments and tax liens that match except for the middle initial. When preparing a purchase agreement for a buyer who is married to someone that is not a buyer and not going on title, indicate that they are married to whoever and who will not be on title. Inform buyers at the beginning of the process that can take title either as joint tenants or as tenants in common, and let them know that may wish to consult an attorney for advice if they are not sure which way is most suitable for them. Often buyers first hear about this question at the closing table, where they do not have time to consider what is the best for their particular situation. When preparing a purchase agreement, try to obtain the best information possible to properly list the legal description of the property. The listing agent may have a copy of the deed that put the seller in title. When representing the sellers, find out at the very beginning whether any of the sellers have filed bankruptcy, whether anyone in title has passed away or has either gotten married or divorced during the time they owned the property. These items are frequently completely unknown at the time a title insurance commitment is prepared, and the result is frequently a title insurance commitment is uncertainties and alternative possible requirements. Why the lender matters: efficiency. How does their business operate? Reputation. We can let you know who we would recommend as a title company. Reliability. Negligence is nonsense. Service is priceless. Relationships are huge. As you know, doing business with the same lenders can have huge benefits. So, who you partner with in business matters. A smooth closing is a team effort. The common goal can be accomplished easily when all parties are diligent. The number one thing for agents to understand is we can fix almost anything if we are aware of it. And the more lead time we have, the better in the title issue, the better if the title issue is more complicated. If they are listing their house and a quiet title action needs to be done on the property, it can be done prior to the listing, or at least timed not to affecting the closing. Many times our underwriters will allow us to close with a letter of undertaking. I think sometimes they think we won't find the information, but that is what we do. So more than likely we'll find it. It is so much better to let us be proactive in resolving any potential issues. So making us aware of them gives them a much better chance of getting the issues fixed prior to the closing, instead of finding out the day before, and more likely at the closing table. That's when it'll blow up. So have the agent help them understand it doesn't matter if they had a hostile divorce, which we've seen. We can still get it transferred if we are aware of it, because we know how to fix these types of things. Trying to cover up a judgment, tax lien, or divorce will only delay closing. And here is an easy no-brainer, but everyone wants their closure. There is no benefit to having a different representation for the buyer and the seller when it comes to title. Our obligations remain the same. If I were an agent, I would always have the buyer's title company control the transaction, so long as they are a reputable company. The reason behind this is when it is a dual, we can fix things easier. We are not working against another closer. When you have dual transactions, we can pick the underwriter which would be the best for their transaction. We can fix things in a matter of minutes, real time. So there's just some efficiencies if you're doing both the sell and the buy side. Our coordinators can contact mortgage companies multiple times trying to get a package in time, only to be blown off. I know this is more involvement on the agent's part, or could this be something their transaction coordinator could stay on top of? What we're talking about here is that we need help. If we need help, we're going to call you, If we're not getting anything from the seller and or the buyer, we need to call you, contact you, and get help from them. So we can get all the information we need to make this go faster, smoother, better, more efficiently. How Minnesota Title can help you. We can refer the good partners. We can give a heads up on title troubled closings. We'll go above and beyond to make it happen. Like I say, especially here in this office, you've got Randy and Ryan, and then we also have Jane, who helps, and Lindsay, her processor. So, you know, don't just send in a PA with no other info. Give us all the info up front. Use that closing worksheet. That helps. Fill out as much as you can. Help us help you. Give us the most information that you can. So we can get you the Alta, in time. We want to do a good job by you, and getting us the most information up front will help us do that. And that's it. I thank you. Thank you for your time. Glad you could join me, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.